Genesis. And I'll read that over again. Vayomer, Aruher, Tinan, Eved, Avadim, Yeyeh, Li, Chav. And it says here, and he said, and he continued to say, evidently he said it over and over again, cursed, Aruher, cursed is Canaan. All right? Servant of servants, slaves of slaves, he may become. Now, we talked about this. I listened to my tape last week, and I forgot something. We talked about the different thing. We thought that the theologians have said that maybe that Canaan or Ham just dishonored his father by looking at him and making fun of him. Others say maybe he actually had a homosexual relationship with his father. Now, one of them I left out, which was very important. Several theologians also believe that he actually had slept with his mother because she was drunk with his father, and that he had had a relationship with her, and that she had Canaan. Okay, now that one I forgot to tell you. All right. Now, whether that's true or not, but let's look at a couple of places in the Bible where this was actually the case. Okay? And it would greatly dishonor. And in the book of Leviticus 18, 7, 8, 9, and 11, and 20, and 11, and 12. Someone go to the book of Leviticus now. It says that he saw his father's nakedness. Okay? Now, I skipped completely over this last week. I got off on some other tangent sometimes and forget something. Would I go back and listen to see what I left out? All right? Is anyone back in Leviticus right now? John, are you in Leviticus?
Yeah.
All right. What translation do you have?
New American Standard.
Okay. Now, well, let's see what it says. 18 and 7, 8, 9, and 11.
7, 8, 9, 11.
Yeah.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, that is, the nakedness of your mother.
That's right.
She is your mother, you are not to uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife, it is your father's nakedness.
All right.
The nakedness of your sister, either your father's daughter or your mother's daughter, whether born at home or born outside, their nakedness you shall not uncover. And then chapter
20,
11.
20, 11, and 12. Or verse 11, did you get verse 11?
The nakedness of your father's wife's daughter, born to your father, she is your sister. You shall not uncover her nakedness.
And it says in there in some places that because it is the nakedness of your father. In other words, it's his child. And a wife is a father. To uncover your mother is to uncover your father.
It's verse 8.
Yeah.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is your father's nakedness.
That's right. So, I mean, and I forgot to tell you this last week because this was a very important part. I jumped over it. Okay, now 20 and verse 11 and 12. Chapter 20, 11 and verse 12. And then someone go to Genesis 35, 22 and 49, 3, and then 2 Samuel 16, 21 and 22. You can remember all those. All right, John, do you have 20, 11 and 12?
Yeah. If there is a man who lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death. Their blood guiltiness is upon them. If there is a man who lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall surely be put to death. They have committed incest. Their blood guiltiness is upon them.
All right, Genesis 35 and verse 22 and 49 and verse 3. And then 2 Samuel 16, 21 and 22. This was a very serious crime. Later on in the law of Moses, it called for death of both parties. All right. Who's got Genesis 35, 22? Randall?
It came about while Israel was dwelling in the land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it.
All right. Now this, here was the punch point on the last week's, and I forgot it. It's pitiful. And 49 and 3.
Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. What we call it?
Yep.
Uncontrolled as water, you shall have preeminence, because you went up. You shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, and you defiled it. He went up to my couch.
Yep. He uncovered his father's nakedness. All right. 2 Samuel 16, 21 and 22. Absalom, peace to the father. That's what his name is. Absalom, peace to his father. Peace to his father. 2 Samuel 16, 21 and 22.
I got it, but I don't know that first word. Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Go into your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house. Then all Israel will hear that you have made yourself odious to your father. The hands of all who are with you will be strengthened." So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and Absalom went in to his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. The advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if one inquired of the word of God. So was all the advice of Ahithophel, or whatever, regarded by both David and Absalom.
All right.
I don't understand that.
Okay. What he did was he told Ahithophel told Absalom, go in and uncover your father's nakedness in the sight of all Israel.
Which means
It was a terrible thing.
by being with the concubines.
Yep, by being with his wives. The wives were concubines were wives. Just forget the word concubine. It doesn't really matter. They were his wives. A concubine just didn't have any inheritance, but she was a wife. And we know that Abraham had 3 wives, didn't he? He had a Shemite, which was Sarah. He had a Hamite, which was
Egyptian.
the Egyptian. All right. And he had a Japhethite, which was his last wife. All right. So, in blessing all the nations, Abraham did that to a certain extent. All right. He had a descendant of Ham, Shem, and Japheth for a wife. Okay. So there we see that. Now, the races are all mixed up and everything now. Now let's go back here so we know now whatever Ham did, if Canaan was a product of that incestuous relationship, that whole Canaan's whole family were cursed because of it. His whole family was cursed. But it was not only the curse because of what Ham had done, but this is what these people would become. In the end, they would become extremely licentious, horrible, morally corrupt, and morally or religiously corrupt, because their religion would be also sex. So there we have it. There's the rest of the story on what could have happened here between Ham and his father. Of all of the above, incestuous, homosexual act, just maybe dishonoring, which I don't think that would really be. And then this act here with his mother uncovering his father's nakedness, I think that one's probably the closest one to being correct of all of them, because why
Canaan.
Why was Canaan cursed in such a strong way? And not only that, why later in the law of Moses would they put that down as a specific thing? All right, so we see that later on. All right, have any of you ever heard any of these before at all? Any of this? No? No? Yes? You had, brother? Okay. All right. So, Vayomer Arur Canaan Eved Avadim Yehye Li'eh Chav. That verse there, 9:25. Now let's go on. We're going to look at a lot of these different names. We're going to look at, and the idea here is that God, through these three sons, would populate the world. And that each one of these sons would have a specific gift. Now, if Noah had cursed Ham, he would have cursed himself.
What? No, say that again.
If Noah would have cursed Ham, he would have cursed himself. Because that whole line would have been cursed.
Yeah.
And his descendants would have all been cursed.
True, but it was just
Okay, but that wasn't what happened. He cursed one family of them, which was Canaan, or Canaan. All right, and those are the ones that would go into the land of Canaan and prepare the land during the Egyptian bondage. These Canaanites would be down there, and they would be building up the land, and they would go into a land flowing with milk and honey, and farms and ranches and houses that they did not build. And those people basically were pretty much annihilated. Some of them actually married into, well, you know that Judah had Canaanites, wives, and all the problems with that. Well, let's go on now. Vayomer, Baruch, and Ha, the Bar, or Hashem, or Jehovah, however you want to say that name. It means to he who shall become. Elohi, Shem, Vahi, Canaan, Eved, Nemo. Let's go and look at this now. And he said, third person, masculine, singular, cal, wow, consecutive, and perfect. And he said, and kept on saying that word Vayomer, blessed, blessed, be a blessing, having become a blessing. Is what it literally means. Having become a blessing, Baruch. All right? Having become a blessing, Jehovah, Elohi, the God of Shem. All right? God of Shem. Shem means ownership. It means name. It means monument. Now, through Shem, the human race would be blessed with these three sons. Shem, through Shem, we have the three, what we call monotheistic faiths. What are the three monotheistic faiths? Brother Rex got a little bit of this morning. Who are the three monotheistic faiths? Through the Shem, through the sons of Shem, they give us the three monotheistic faiths. Judaism, Islam, or Mohammedanism, and what else? Christianity, or Christiandome. There we have those three monotheistic faiths. The great monotheistic faith, what the world says. Through those, these would be the religious leaders. We find out that some would be, well, actually they would be ceased to exist at one time. Right here, God is going to give the administration of His kingdom not to the Jews, but to the Japhethites. They're going to be the administrators of God's kingdom in the church age. That's weird, but God said that would happen. He would abide in the tents of Shem. Japheth would. We're going to see that in just a minute. The Hamites would go out and they would discover every discovery that would be made. They would blaze all the trails into the civilization. They would found the greatest civilizations that ever was. they would make the furthest advancement in medicine that ever was at that period of time. And I want to tell you something. Now, the Japhethites would be the minds of the world. They would be the philosophizers and everything. But you know, the Japhethites. Now, this morning we talked about the oath of the Hippocratic oath. The Hippocratic oath. Hippocrates. All right. Who was this Hippocrates? Who was he? What nationally was he? He was a Greek. Thank you, brother. He was Greek. But his idea of medicine was a philosophy and not reality. More people were killed with the Greek idea of medicine than ever were saved. And George Washington was one of the famous people that was killed with the Greek idea of medicine. Because they thought a person had to have a balance. And you had to have a balance of bile and phlegm and all this kind of stuff. And if you got one out of that order, then you had to bleed you. They would bleach you. They put leeches on you, and the barber was the doctor. You went to the barber and put leeches on you, and all this to try to get well. They had to balance your blood out, which was cuckoo. Now, the greatest doctors in the world at that time were the Chinese, and even in South America, they were doing brain surgeries down in the Incas and the Mayans. They were doing all kinds of, they were capping teeth, they were doing dentistry, all this kind. And Europe was doing nothing with medicine except bleeding each other because of bad philosophy. Okay? The Hamites, they founded the greatest civilizations in the early times, and also some of the most corrupt. They made all the basic inventions in the world, from training horses. Do you know that the Japhethites never trained any animal? As I've studied and come into it, I always thought the Northern European, I always thought the Danish and the Dutch and everything, they mainly ate off of milk and butter and cheese. But I found out they didn't even domesticate those animals. It was the Hamites that did that. As far in history, as far as the inventions go, nothing but the windmill was ever invented by Japhethites. And they maybe think that they got the idea from somebody else. Yes?
What do you think happened to those civilizations? Why did they fall so far?
Why did they get so far and they stopped?
Today.
Well, now they were the trailblazers. They would go out. If you look on the map, and I showed you earlier my DNA with a map, the DNA, real DNA, goes right back exactly like the Bible says it does. And you can see that going right back to the Middle East. That's where it goes. It starts all over the world. Mine is basically American Indian, but it zips back over into Europe and goes back into the Middle East. Zip in the cradle of humanity. That's where it goes. Everybody's DNA does that, because this is what happens in the book of Genesis. They thought people evolved in different places. But then in DNA they found it was just from one woman and one man. Boy, did that backfire. Now they have to figure out something else. All they have to do is read the Bible. All they have to do is read the Bible. What happened to these giant civilizations and everything? We find that the further you get away from the Middle East, where would that be? Where?
Over here.
Well, part of it in Americas, but Australia is way out there. The further they got away from the Middle East, the more primitive they lived, the more simple lives. They didn't really want a lot of things. They lived, and they expected God to take care of them. And they studied medicine. They studied the animals and the food stuff. The American Indian, the Aborigines, the Africans even. You know that they were inoculating for disease, even smallpox and everything in Africa, hundreds of years before the white man even thought about doing anything? Who invented toilet paper? Huh?
I said heavens to Betsy.
While Europe was squandering in filth.
Probably the Chinese, I guess. I don't know.
While Europe was squandering in filth and disease and dying of disease, we come over here to America and we find the Indians living 120 years and living clean lives, taking baths and everything. And their hygiene was much higher than those over there. You go to China. Go to China, and we find out they invented toilet paper, Brother Bill, as you said. They also invented the toilet. While Europe was using the gutters in the street for septic systems,
They did.
they did.
It was
That's the way it was. Filthy.
filthy place.
Dying at 35 and 40 years old, and many dying before that of disease.
Yes.
Brother,
The British called the bathroom the loo.
the what?
Loo.
Yeah.
Like it started from going stuck in their pots out the window and hollering, "Look out below!"
Yeah. They would throw their pots out the windows in the morning and just hit the street. That's what they did. It was terrible disease. Now the Chinese will do that. Even today, 70% of all pharmaceutical medicine that you get in the drugstore for your diseases that you have were first invented, discovered by the Hamite races, the American Indians and the Chinese. That's where they came from. Okay? Now, I read a couple of weeks ago where the Japhethites, now they are the thinkers, but sometimes it got them in trouble. We find out the church age is going to get them in trouble too. Okay? Now you're wrong. Every place that they went in, they followed the Hamites. And they went in and they basically annihilated their culture, and they conquered them. And one of the places where that was done tremendously was in China originally. They didn't get very far in China because of the massive numbers. But Hong Kong, all that's the colony. Africa, they couldn't go real deep in Africa, so there were some people there that have their culture and their language. American Indians were pretty much annihilated. And this is one of the things that the Japhethites did, is they took the language, they made it illegal for the people wherever they conquered to speak their own language. Now, as the linguist study, as you are is what you think. All right? You are what you think. You are your philosophies of your life and who you are and your legends and everything. When you take that language away from you, you have destroyed the culture, haven't you? And annihilated the culture. And is that not what happened here and in Australia and in South America, Central America, and North America?
Everywhere the United Kingdom.
Every human being of Ham, Shem, and Japheth had a certain contribution to give to humanity as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
They did. And in a balance, that happened.
Yeah.
Who was the greatest scientist in modern times? The greatest scientist?
Einstein.
Einstein. What was he?
Jewish.
He was a Jew. He was a Jew. Well, now, a Jew is a spiritual person, isn't he? But where was Einstein raised?
Here.
Germany. And what are the Germans?
Japheth.
Japhethites. So he took his tremendous ability, but he divorced his culture and adopted the Japhethite idea, and he discovered how the universe was put together. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, and all the different things. Who was the father of modern psychology?
I hope it wasn't Freud.
It was Freud. Freud was a Jew, but he was also a German Jew. There you go again. They had to leave their cultures. You find out in Northern Europe and up and through there, they were basically a bunch of warriors. What is a Viking?
Warrior.
Huh?
Warrior.
What does Viking mean? What does Viking mean? It's a verb originally. It meant to kill and slaughter and murder. That's what they did. They killed each other. Huh? They drank each other's blood and all kinds of stuff. They'd eat the hearts of their enemies or their liver or something. You know, I mean, they did these things. These were some rough people.
That's where we get our word berserk from.
From what?
Berserk.
Yeah.
Go berserk.
Yeah.
That means, I don't know if you knew that or not. That was derived from the Vikings.
Yeah.
They wore bear skins. That
Yeah.
was bear skin.
Uh-huh.
That became identified with the slaughter. So the expression go berserk was
Yeah.
from that
Yeah.
source.
The Viking meant to slaughter and kill, and they named them Vikings, which meant to conquer and kill. Okay? But then they came in contact with other people and other cultures. And when they mixed, their whole society was raised a certain way. Almost all societies that are isolated from others will be less than they could if they were being mixed. Now the Ku Klux Klan thing, the Aryan, Hitler, the Nazi type situation. Hitler says the Aryan race.
Is it?
Okay, the Aryan race was the masterminds and the pure race. They were Japhethites. The Aryans were. But where did they come from originally? Where did the Aryans, where did they really thrive? India. And India has the most brutal caste system in the world, doesn't it? If you're in the lower caste, if you're an untouchable, you're an untouchable no matter what. You know who set the caste system upon them? The Aryans set the caste system upon the other Indian cultures. And they said, you are less than we are. And that is still surviving to this day. And this is thousands of years. Okay? Every society has something to contribute to mankind. The Hamites blazed the trail and made almost all the inventions of the world. The Japhethites went behind them and perfected many of those basic inventions. Everything. We wouldn't have modern brain surgery if the Japhethites hadn't discovered what the Mayans and Incas did, and the Egyptians that did over there with brain surgery and medicine, and even they wouldn't even have any medicine. Now they will take a natural substance and they will, in most cases, they will make a synthetic. All right? But they're still discovering all kinds of medicine out there that the Hamites have given to society. The toilet, the water closet, was invented by the Chinese. That's one of the most sanitary things that save lives. It's just cleanliness, hygiene, and all history. Writing paper was invented by the Hamites. They were, the papyrus, where we get our word paper from, came from what? Egypt. Okay? Egyptian. And the Chinese. Who invented the printing press? Who invented the printing press? Who invented the modern printing press? The first Bible was printed on it, the Gutenberg press, which is German.
Yes.
But who was making print? Who made the first type?
Chinese.
The Chinese and the Egyptians made the first type and the first paper. Now, the knowledge of all of the world is gathered together in books. Is gathered together in books. Well, those Japhethites wouldn't even have any paper to write it on if they didn't get it from the Hamites. Or any way to put it in a book. Do you see how different cultures have... And then we have the Shemites that were... The Shemites all the way from here. Shem means what? Name or monument or pillar. Renown. So Shem would bless the world spiritually. When we come to the cross of Calvary, we have the Shemites calling for the death of their Messiah King. The Messiah King had ridden into Jerusalem on a donkey and had taken over his kingdom, and they usurped it from him. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven suffers what? Violence. And it says in King James that every man tries to press into it. What it means that all these people try to grab religion and wrest it for their own power. All right? We come up to the cross of Calvary. We have the Hamites calling for the death of the Messiah, who actually ordered his death. But of course he was forced to. Pontius Pilate, which was a Japhethite. Who carried the cross to Calvary? A Hamite. A Hamite. There we have all three races there at Calvary. Okay? All three races at Calvary. Now, during the church age, where is the greatest biblical literature that's ever been written, probably? Where did it come from? Well, there was some back in Alexandria, yeah. But in modern times, in the last 200 years, 250, 300 years. What are some of the greatest? Where?
Japheth.
Japhethites.
Yeah.
Germany.
Germany.
Anybody ever read Eric Sauer's works? If you want to get something to just spiritually lift you up, read Eric Sauer's work, The Crimes of the Crucified, The Dawn of World Redemption, From Eternity to Eternity, some of the Japhethites. Parables of the Bible by, can you think of his name? He translated all of Eric Sauer's work from German. The greatest language scholars were German. If you want a real Hebrew Bible with the footnotes in it and an apparatus, you've got to go to the Biblical Hebraica. You've got to go to the German. I've shown you that Bible. Get over them. In the church age, when the Lord handed over the administration of His kingdom to the Japhethites, tremendously brilliant writers wrote it down in books so that we can study it, so that we can study language. But the Hamites gave us the paper. The Hamites gave us the ink to write with. But they also gave us gunpowder too. They invented the toothbrushes a long time ago. They invented hygene to make man live long. Inoculation for disease, all this. They discovered it. 927. Japheth. Elohim. Li Japheth. Ve Yishkom. Bi'ah. Hole. Shem. Vahi. Kenan. Eved. Lamor. All right. May give enlargement. Make wide. Japheth, that means to make wide. Enlargement. Now the Hamites were going to go out, and you'll understand why I'm saying what I'm saying here. As the Hamites went out and blazed the trails of civilization, the Japhethites would come back and go and follow them and take over those civilizations. All right? And here we would go. Enlarging God, Elohim, to Japheth. And he may dwell, he may rub out time, as Brother Hubbard used to tell me. He may rub out time, he may dwell, Bihale, in tents of Shem. He may dwell in the tents of Shem. Now what in the world? He may dwell in the tents of Shem. And he may be Canaan a servant to him. Actually to them. How's this going to happen? The Hamites are going to go out. They're going to blaze the trail. And Shem is going to be the spiritual pillar of the human race, except he's going to lose it. And then, by way of Canaan going out and blazing the trail, then Japheth is going to come and live in his tents also. The Canaanites were a people that went in and they settled the land of Canaan or Palestine, whatever you want to call it. And they were going to be taken over. And what would happen to the sons of Ham later as they went out into different places? That we have England colonizing the world. There was one English general one time. He went out and he was in war with these people, and the English will not dirty their hands with manual labor. Did you know that? The hierarchy, they won't dirty their hands with the labor. They will not do it.
But that's what the Irish were for.
Yeah, that's what everybody else is for, but not them. The aristocracy, the higher ups, they won't dirty their hands with labor. This general went out there and he was laying siege to this place, and he got out there because he was a great mind with mathematics and everything else. He went out there and he told them how to build, and he built these things, and they conquered and knocked through the wall and did all this stuff. And then he wrote a letter of apology for doing it, because he had done something with manual labor with his hands. The whole society was ashamed of him because he had done this. That's for other people. Working with your hands is for other people. Now, if you don't think that still is in existence today, Mr. Bush says, we will get these people come up here and they will do work that we don't want to do. Remember that? Is it still, the philosophy still there today? Now, I want to tell you something a little bit about history because I've lived some of it. When I was young, even in grade school and in high school, in the summertime, you could go out and get a job as a student, picking cotton, working on fields, working in dairy, working on farms, wherever you ranches, whatever you want to do. You as a young person today, you just try to go out and do that. Ain't going to happen. They've got workers up here to do that. We have set a caste society have to kick in. Except it just didn't happen like that. Because these workers that doing things that we didn't want to do got into the plumbing. They become plumbers. They become electricians. They become carpenters. And pretty soon they got all the jobs that we didn't want to do, supposedly. All right? It's still with us today. The philosophy is still there today. Good or bad? I'm just throwing it out for you to make you think. Old J. Lewis Guthrie and Ben Bogart says, "Thank you, young man. It's a good trick if you can do it. You throw information out and just think about it." Okay? Because as we read these prophecies, these are prophecies, people, from God's Word. How many of you ever even looked at any of this like this before as a prophecy that it is? Arthur Cousins wrote 10 volumes on this. 10 volumes on this very subject. Science and the Bible. Noah's 3 sons. 9:28. By chief. How's that next word there? Noah. Achar. Hamabud. Shilosh. Miot. Shana. By Chamashim. Shana. You're getting pretty good at this Hebrew, aren't you? And became, existed, lived, Noah. What does Noah mean? Peace and safety. He's the 10th from Adam. The first 10 names in the Bible speak of the whole triumphant of the crucified. How that Christ would come. That the whole plan of salvation is in the first 10 names that we look. And then Achar means after. Hamabud. Say Hamabud. That's the flood. Shilosh. Okay. 3, Miot. Say Miot. Miot is 100. Shana. That's years. By Chamishim. And that I on the front of it there, Va on the front of it there is and. Chamashim, that is 50. Shana, years. All right. So he lived 350 years after the flood, didn't he? Well, that's quite a while. You know what a man could learn if he could live 350 years and still have a noggin? If you could live 150 years, some of those Chinese, there's one Chinese man, remember the Chinese, the ones that invented medicine and hygiene and all that stuff. There's one Chinese guy that lived 300 years. And you know what he was by trade? A doctor. That's the oldest living man in history as far as we know.
What era was that?
Yeah, from like 1400 to 1700.
You mean after the flood?
Huh? Real. What?
You mean after the flood?
Yeah, after the flood. From like 1400 to 1700 and something he lived. There was one guy in England, one servant in England that lived like 175 or 80 years. The king asked him for an audience that he'd come there. He went to the king's palace and they fed him and everything else and he fell over dead. They said the excitement overtook him. Vayigu, 929. Vayigu, coal. Say that's the easy one, coal. Say that coal. Say that word coal there. Coal and Yemeh. Noah. Tisha. Miut. Shana. Vaychamishim. What's the next one? Shana. What's the next one? Vayimot. And he died. Right? Boy, I'll tell you what, you're going to see a whole lot of Vayimot. That's he died. Now, every one of these, I don't care if they live 900 years, 600, 700, 969 years, 850 years, whatever, in the end of it says Vayimot. All right. Vayihu. And kept on living all the days of Noah, all the Yemi, all the days of Noah. Tisha, 9, Miot, Shana, 100, Vaychamishim, and 50. In other words, he's 950 years old. Shana, years. And then what? Vayimot. Third person masculine singular. Each one of our deaths is singular. You die for yourself. Everyone dies for himself. We all have an appointment. Vayimot. Third person masculine singular, while consecutive, imperfect tense. Once you die, you stay dead until the resurrection. All right, 10 and verse 1. Chapter 10. Boy, this is exciting. Chapter 10. All right. V'eleh. Tivadot. Beneh. Noah. Shem. Tom. Japheth. Vayiv. Vayledu. Yeah. Vayiv Valedu. That's a long word. Vayiv Valedu. I had so much writing on here I couldn't even read my own Hebrew. Lahem, Banim, Achar, Hamabu. Let's go back and look at this now. And these, the LA, and these Tabidot, the family histories. Toledot, the family histories. In Hebrew, in Greek, is hygenesis. Hygenesis. The Genesis. The word Genesis comes right from this word. The Genesis. The Genesis, or the generations, or the family histories. The sons of Noah. Shem, name, monument. Tom, what's Tom mean? Black, warm, all right. Black or warm, excitable, a little bit. Excitable sometimes. Heat. It has the idea of heat. All right. Now, if you, and they say pretty soon it's going to be against the law to buy a new black car in California. What? Huh? Heat. Because black builds heat. Now, if you lived in Alaska, a black car is real good, but in California, a black car is not so good. Because it draws heat, takes a whole lot more air conditioning to cool a car off than it does a white car, or a silver car, or a golden color, or a champagne color, or whatever. Okay? Black draws heat. Okay? All right. Ham. And then Japheth. Japheth means spreading. It means light. It means expanding. And Vayivaledu. And they were born, and they were begotten to them sons, Banim, sons, after the flood. So they had sons, they had nations, they had personalities. Every one of these nations would have personalities that were born. Nations have personalities. We've studied that before. Nations have personalities. 10 and verse 2. Now here we get into the modern anthropology. This is the modern genesis of the world, right here. We're going to look at these. B'nai, Japheth, Gomer. All right. Magog. All right. Well, I can hardly read my writing. Umade. Von. Vetubal. Umeshek. Oh, I can hardly read. I've got that here. All right. Umeshek. And then Bet-Teros. Okay, I hope I didn't miss anything. I mean, it's all written up, as you can see here. I mean, what a mess. Okay? Sons of Japheth. Spreading, extender. Gomer. Let's look at some of this. I've got a little paper downloaded of the history of some of these races. And this is what it says about that in this writing. History has recorded Japheth's geographical enlargement. The entire western hemisphere of our globe is settled by Japhethic peoples. The East Indians are the same stock. The record of Japheth's spread enlargement over the earth has been marred consistently with his destruction of the cultures which were already in existence wherever he went. Remember I told you, the language stock of a person, of a nation, the history of a nation is their language. When you destroy their language, you have destroyed them as a culture. Okay? It's the destruction of the cultures which were already in existence wherever they arrived in sufficient force to achieve a dominion. It happened in the Americas, Africa, Asia, Australia. Only numerical superiority of a native population has hitherto preserved parts of Africa and China from the same fate. Indeed, in the early historic times, the pattern of events repeated again and again, where whatever culture advances the pioneering Hamites had achieved tended to be swallowed up by the succeeding Japhethites. The enlargement of Japheth has continued to this day, an enlargement greatly accelerated graphically, geographically in the last century, frequently at the expense of the Hamites, or the Canaanites, sometimes withstood for that, who first possessed the lands. Gomer. Gomer. Let's look at this word Gomer here. It's Gomer in Greek also, Gomer. 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 You want to look that one up, it's on page 170, I believe. It means accomplished, it means complete, it means to bring to an end. All right? Gomer literally means completion and is the progenitor of the early Sumerians and other branches of the Celtic family, settling in Eastern Europe near the Black Sea, and became the Gauls, the French, the Galatians. Galatians, remember? We studied the book of Galatians. So that they were descendants of the Gomer. The Gaels, the Scots, the Celts, the Irish, the Goths, the Germans, Scandinavians, Saxons, British, Welsh, Dutch, Armenians, Romans, and related groups. Even there, Brother Randall, there you are. That's you. All right. Magog. Magog. And Magog. Now, Magog. Remember now, this word Magog here is the Russians. You know what the word Magog means? Magog, huh?
Invade, attack.
Uh-huh.
I'm reading your notes.
Yeah. Invade, attack, it means literally to cover, to overcome, to vanquish, to just overwhelm. Okay? First setting in Georgia, a region between the Black and the Caspian Sea, south of the Caucasus Mountains, and became the Scythians, the Russians, the Belarusians, and the Ukrainians. All right, that's who they are. This is the people we're studying. And you go all the way down. You can see Maryland's DNA in there. You can even see Dakota's DNA. And if you did your DNA, you would see it all going back right here where the Bible says it. Isn't that beautiful? May Day. May Day. All right. And May Day. If I can even find my writings. May Day. You May Day. May Day means middle. Middle land. He settled northwest of Persia proper, south and southwest of the Caspian Sea, east of Armenia and Assyria. And where did that ark land? Turkey and Armenia. Turkey. Okay. West, northwest of the great salt desert of Iran and the ancient kingdom of Media, which is now Iraq in the northern part of Iran. He is the father of the Medes and the East Indians. Okay? Medes and the East Indians made that. And then we come on to the word Yavan. Yavan. Okay? Yavan means bubbling. These basically are the Greeks. It means the people of the vines. Let's just think about that for a while. What got Noah and his wife in trouble? The bubbling. The fermenting of the wine. It means effervescence, or one in the state of bubbling. He fathered the Ionians. The Ionians. When you look at the word, if you look in Greek lexicons, it's an Ionic word. Ionia. And it's a Hellenic word. Hellenic word. That means Helen. All right, Hellenic. The Ionians in Greek, the sons occupy Cyprus, Rhodes, and other islands and coasts of the Mediterranean and the coast of Spain, Italy, and Portugal. My Greek friend, Photios Kodiakos. His whole name is Photios Kodiakopoulos. All right. He said, I'm the smartest Greek, know more about Greek than any human being in the world. Of course, he was educated in classical and Koine Greek. And I tell him things, we've talked over the years, for the last 30 or 40 years. And he came to my house one time, and this was about 10 years ago, and I think he first met Marilyn. And he came in there, and Marilyn was in there cooking in the kitchen. He said, she's Mediterranean. He said, she's Mediterranean. She's Italian, she's French, she's Greek. What is she? I said, well, she's supposed to be Danish.
Well, he was speaking in Greek.
He was talking to me in Greek, yes.
Yeah.
He was speaking to me in Greek. We were talking in Koine Greek, by the way. He asked me what she was, and I said, well, she's supposed to be Danish. He said, nope, she's Mediterranean. When we did her DNA, she's Mediterranean. She's not Danish, very little Danish. She's Mediterranean. She's Greek, French, Italian. All right. Italy and Portugal. Now we come to this other name down here. Tubal. All right, Tubal. Tubal. Tubal means you shall be led, or you shall lead. The city of Poblex was named after him. He settled in Cappadocia in Asia Minor and fathered the Bulgarians, the Hungarians, the Albanians, the Romanians, and other related groups. Okay? This is pretty. What?
The Slavic people.
Yep. Now we come down here to the word Meshech. Meshech. Meshech means what?
Acquisition, possession.
It means to possess. It means to acquire. Heir of the house. It means also to impoverish and to disinherit. What they do. When you go in there and you acquire and you inherit, then you impoverish the people that are there, don't you? Impoverish and disinherit. He settled across the Propontis and fathered the Thracians, the maritime group. And what did these maritime groups do? They went conquering, didn't they? Possibly the Etruscans of Italy. By the way, the Etruscans. We hear very little about the Etruscans. The Etruscans were the fathers of the Rome that we know of today.
I was about to ask you about that. I was wondering if they were not the same source as the Greeks, but they apparently aren't.
They're a little bit different. They are the Latin, the Roman. All right? Brother.
You're talking about the Slavic people. Were the Greeks included in that?
The Greeks are from the Japheth. They are the people of the vine. Almost every Greek is growing wine and all this kind of stuff. Okay, that's the people of the vine. All right. These Slavics were the Meshech. Okay, the Slavic were Meshech, and now we have the Etruscans of Italy. By the way, the Romans got their idea of their philosophy from this, from the Etruscans. Their war, their basically their language groups and everything's all right there. And then through his sons Ashkenaz, Riphtah, and Togarmah, Gomer peopled much of Armenia and the Carpathian Mountains. Ashkenaz. Now let's go over here to 10 and 3. 10 and 3. Uvaneh. Oh, I haven't written this one quite so bad. I could almost read that. Uvaneh. Gomer. Ashkenaz. Beriphat. Betah Gormah. Okay. Now, we're right up here where we're going. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Beriphat, which is Riphath, and Togarmah. All right, let's look at who these guys are. Ashkenaz means to scatter like fire. Okay? Ashkenaz means to scatter like fire. To scatter like fire. Now, which people went axing everybody? Which ones went axing, putting the axe on and burning everybody's civilizations that they came in contact? Who were the ones? Remember I told you about these people? The word Viking. This is the Vikings right here. These are the smashers, which means to sprinkle or to scatter like fire. He settled first Armenia, migrating thence to Bithynia, northern islands of Europe, and the European west coast, Germany, Scandinavia, and Denmark. All right? Riphath, means to slander or to fault. To slander or to fault. That's what Riphath means. Are you enjoying this? Just giving some stuff here. He settled in Czechoslovakia, Romania, Togarmah, which means you will break her. You will break her. His earliest descendants settled in Armenia, Turkey, and Germany. In the late 18th century BC, that's before Christ, Armenia probably was uprooted and transferred most of those still living on Armenia. Then we come to the name 10 and verse 4 now. 10 and verse 4. You ready to quit, or you want to go a little further? You want to go a little further? Okay. Uvaneh, Yavan, Elisha, Bet Tarshish, Kittim, Vadonim. All right. And sons of Javan, Elisha, Betarshash, Kittim, and Dodanim. Let's look at these. Elisha means my God is disregarded. The Greek translation is Hellas. These are the Greeks, the Hellenistic Greeks. All right. Remember the Greek language. Well, that's Hebrew. I have to keep remembering that. I'm teaching Hebrew, not Greek. But the Greek language, the first part of the Greek language, the origin of the Greek language was in what we call different separate groups, like islands or colonies. Okay? And from the Ionians, from the Hellas, we get the word Hellas, which means Greek. Okay? From all of these different dialects, we have what we call classical Greek. From the dialects, we go into classical Greek, and from classical, we go into Koine. From Koine, we go into the Byzantine Greek, and we go from the Byzantine, we go to the modern Greek. That's the history of the Greek language in short. Okay? But this is where the Greek language began. All right. Elish means my God has disregarded. The Greek translation of Hellas, his descendants settled in Greece. Tarshish, she will cause poverty, or she will scatter. He settled in Spain. Kittim means beaters down. These kind of violent people, aren't they? What did the Spanish do for several hundred years? The Spain was the mistress of the sea, wasn't she? The Spanish Armada, all of this. The mistress of the sea. The Spain went out and conquering, and Spain went out and beat down. They were the bruisers. That's what the word Kittim means. Bruisers. They set up strife first in the Mediterranean islands of Macedonia. Philip of Macedonia, remember that? Philip of Macedonia. That's where my name Phillips comes from. And Phillips means lover of horses. That's what Philip, Philo and Hippos. Philip of Macedon. And how did they conquer? By their horses. By riding their horses. What was Alexander the Great's favorite horse, Dakota? Should have given you a little time to look. He named the city after that horse. These horse people. All right. Dadaniyam means leaders. He settled in Rhodes and the Dardanelles and was subsequently deified and worshipped as Jupiter. Jupiter Dadanias. The Dardanelles. All right. Now this writer here, remember when I told you there's a little, this is the theologian and anthropologist here. I want to read what he said about Ham. Because we studied this a little bit earlier tonight. Ham literally means warm or passionate, as revealed by his sin with his father's wife. He just takes it for granted. Okay. Ham literally means warm or passionate and is revealed by his sin with his father's wife. Although Ham first established himself in Sumer, the land of Ham is Africa, more particularly Egypt. And his descendants, however, were first to leave the territory assigned them and immigrating from Asia to the islands of the Americas. This is the anthropologist. And he brings that little thing out that a lot of theologians say about Ham and his mother. That's how he uncovered his father's nakedness. All right. The Shemites were still in the same area at the time of Abram, and it is the Canaanites who were spread abroad or driven out and scattered, Genesis 10:18, in the days of Peleg, later divided by the Gentiles and the Japhethites, and God enlarged them. All right. I just thought I'd bring that out to you just a little bit tonight, some of this. You'll see how philosophy, politics, science, education, and everything is so instilled in these philosophies. Is that what you're going to call it? From the three races. From the three races. All right, 10 and verse 5. 10 and verse 5. We're clipping along here. Me'eleh nefredu Iye Hagav Yim Be'ertids Zotal Ish Lil Shano Lemish Pachital Be'gav Yihim and from these separated themselves. And from these separated themselves, having separated themselves, is what it literally is, nifel, perfect, having separated themselves, the coastlands of the nations. In their lands, each one, after his what? His language. That word is glossia. Kata glosson is what the Greek Septuagint says, according to their glossaries. After their lamish pe chatam, after their family groups, patriarchal. That's what the idea of it is. Patriarchal. Patria is a Greek word, patria. In taste, philes aton, in the tribes of them. Begot Yehim, in their nations, in their ethnic backgrounds. We got a word ethnic from the Greek word there, ethnisen, auto, in the Septuagint. Do you enjoy just a little bit of this going over in the Greek and seeing what this says? Because so much of our language, all of our medical and anthropological language comes from Greek. But Greek sometimes borrows a few things and a few ideas from Hebrew. All right? And the Bible in Hebrew is a beautiful book. Because the Bible in Hebrew tells us how creation and action is. Greek is, of course, a Japhethitic language, isn't it? Perfection in grammar and language. And if you wanted to write the New Testament, where we have the New Covenant, and get it down right, you would do it in Greek. In the Old Testament, where you would write down the creation of God and how He created the heavens, the earth, and mankind and everything, you would do it in a forceful action language, which is Hebrew. Drawing in all of the idea and the fluid power of God. So there we have a perfect marriage of the Old and the New Testament. How God created and brought into being. And then in the New Testament, how He set down His doctrines. I taught a book that I wrote, The Doctrines of the Bible. I taught that thing in this church, I think, 5 or 6 times. And I think probably some teachers are teaching that someplace in the church right now. It went over so well. I know John Gage, when you walk into his room over there, it's just full of Jim Phillips' library. He goes and teaches the classes. I think he taught the book of James after he read, listened to our things, and taught the book of James. And I think 1st and 2nd Peter and different things. And I think he taught the doctrines of the Bible at some time, and we've had several others teach that also. But the New Testament is a book of doctrines. A book of doctrines, teachings, dogmas from the Word of God, from God's Word. Brother John, are you getting anything out of this?
Yeah.
There's a lot there, isn't it?
They like to settle on the coastland just like people now.
Yeah, they like the oceans because it's a mild climate. Mild climate, except where it's very violent seas. Do you know the first people to ever build a breakwater island were the Hamites? They went out and they built breakwaters. They would go out into you have a natural harbor, and they build a breakwater out there, and they built it with cement. You know who invented cement? The Hamites. And basically, they were using cement in Egypt so many years ago. All right, these are all historical things. You can see the contributions of the peoples. But they built a breakwater out there, and they left holes in it, where it would be like an island breakwater. You go over there at Port San Luis, and you go out and you go past the island out there, the breakwater. There's an island out there that stops the ocean waves from coming in, and it kind of makes the harbor calm and quiet. Pacific. By the way, we have the Atlantic and we have the Pacific. Pacific means the calm ocean. Anyway, these Hamites went out there and they built this breakwater in front of this harbor, and I can't remember what the harbor was. They built it all out here like this. And they left holes in it. Like this. You know why they left the holes in there? This was a violent coast. Pressure. It would splosh up against here, and some of the water would go in. And then the waves, the surf would go out, and as it was coming in and violently approaching, this water in here would roll back out and cushion the waves coming in, would force it back out, and would settle those waves down.
In other words, when they built Caesarea,
Yeah.
you see it on the History Channel, and they talk about how they used this cement they had discovered or invented that would dry underwater and all that.
Yeah.
That had been around for a while
Oh,
already.
a long time. They had built it. They borrowed it.
Yeah.
Okay, they borrowed it. All these different type of things. You can study the whole history of mankind in the book of Genesis. All of it. Where did all this stuff come from? We see one race of people establishing colonies, going out and establishing nations. We see Japheth coming behind and taking over those nations and building those nations in their own name, with all, adopting their ideas, like America. For instance, America. Did Europe ever know anything besides the Greek idea of democracy over there? There was Greeks developed democracy. Every little city was an ecclesia, a city-state that ruled itself. Okay, made their own decisions, everything. The whole empire would be they would have little city-states, these little ecclesias that would contribute to the whole of the nation. Then over into Europe, when you go into Europe, you go into Spain and you go into England, and all of those nations, we have hierarchies, princes and paupers. We have the princes and we have the serfs, don't we? All right? And they have no idea. They wanted to, supposedly they came over to America for religious freedom. Religious freedom for them. Whatever colony you were in America, that's what, if you lived in this colony, you were this. You had no religious freedom. You were going to be this. Right here, you were going to be this.
State control.
State-controlled religion. They didn't know anything different. They come over in America and they run into a pure democracy. The American Indians run from coast to coast in northern America. North America. Those people, even women voted. Women went to school. They had schools. Did you know that? There was a very advanced culture here in America. They came over here, and finally, by about 1770-something, they decided they were going to break off from England, and they were going to establish a republic over here. And it was going to be basically with democratic principles. And you know what they adopted as their preamble to the Constitution? The Iroquois Confession of Faith. We the people. We the people. Now in Europe, it would have been we the princes, we the pauper. They wanted to make George Washington king. Did you know that? They were going to make him king for life. He didn't want him. He said, man, we just got away from that. We the people. We the people is a pure Indian term, because each tribe was a democracy. And they tried to make, have you ever heard of Indian princesses? Indian princess? You've heard of those Indian princesses. My grandfather was an Indian princess or whatever. You've heard of those terms. There were no kings among Indians. Basically, the chiefs were only chiefs as they led. That's all. They didn't stay a chief for life. It wasn't inherited in most of the tribes. And some of them it was to some extent. But most of them were, it's pure democracy. There was no draft. If you wanted to go fight a war, you went and fought it. If you didn't, you just didn't go. If you didn't like the leader, you didn't go that way. You pretty much made up your own ideas. They moved. It was a nomadic culture, everything. America, many of the principles and a lot of the democracy, the democratic principles, were adopted from the American Indians and from the Greeks. That time. A lot of the history, a lot of our modern history goes back to the 10th chapter of Genesis. It didn't begin here. There are no original thoughts at all. No original philosophies. We all inherit those things. Sometimes we inherit them with a lot of prejudice, don't we? I remember my wife was a little bit prejudiced. We were going down the road one day. This is the truth now. You don't know what I'm going to say. We were going down the road. She said, I don't believe in intermarrying. I looked at her and I said, well, what are you going to do about it now? I said, it already had. It's already been done. Oh, I don't mean that, she said. And she inherited a little bit of the prejudice from her family. And when she did her DNA, she'd sit there, ooh! Yeah. Now I tell them the truth. And pretty soon she was a whole lot more tolerant than the other races, because she found out she was some of all of them. But we are prejudiced from our standpoint of our upbringing, aren't we? Brother John.
Even worse than, a lot worse than intermarriage of races is intermarriage of different religions.
That's the problem. That's the problem. That's what the Bible talks about, separation.
That's our problem here in America.
Yeah. It is a problem with all people. What happened to Solomon? He married women that didn't believe like him.
And a bunch of them.
And a whole lot of them. 1,000 altogether. He had, 700 wives, 300 concubines? And all of them his wives, people. I'm telling you, they were all his wives. He had intimate relationship with all of them, period. They were his wives.
He never fought a war, did he?
No, he didn't have to. Now, he had all these wives. It's typified in the millennial reign of Christ when he has his bride. Solomon's reign was a whole lot like. He didn't have to fight a war. He comes back and fights one war. And his bride is with him. Right? Look at all. Think about that a lot. We're studying the Temple of Solomon on Sunday morning. And how much it gives us a kind of a peek into heaven through that Temple of Solomon. This morning I was off the beam and we went into other things. We got in there, got to go and ask some questions. Everything today was we just had a free for all in here, just about. It was a good class, but it was different. It wasn't where we've been going. I kept trying to go that way, but we got back off on other tracks. Thank you for your attention tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in God's Word. Do you have anything else to say? Any other questions before I turn you loose on the world? Go out and do something eternal now. Anybody got any questions? Donna, you got any questions? You learn a little Hebrew? Making use of your Hebrew that you studied before?
Yeah.
That's the difference. That's what we want to do, is make use of that Hebrew. I wouldn't study Hebrew at all. The Bible wasn't written in Hebrew. Oh, it's backwards and upside down. But it's real good for what the Old Testament was. Go to Genesis. That's why I wanted to bring this to you people. We'll start at 10 and verse 6 next week. And what is this? What day is this? Day 8? 8?
Yeah. I would like to have those verses you had us read about the uncovering of Noah.
The what?
The uncovering.
Nakedness.
The nakedness, yes. You know, you had each of us read. I didn't write those down.
Oh, you didn't write those
Right.
deals down? Well, let me give you that real quick so you'll have
Okay.
them. We covered quite a few verses tonight. Genesis 35:22. Genesis 35:22. Genesis 49:3. 2 Samuel 16:21 and 22. Leviticus 18:7, 8, 9, and 11. And Leviticus 20:11 and 20.
Leviticus 15.
Leviticus 18:7, 8, 9, and 11.
Okay.
And Leviticus 20:11 and 20. And as you can see, the writer that's studying this anthropological study that I have here believes that he just makes mention of it as a fact. That Ham had relationships with his father. Now, in other places it'll say that probably Canaan was the product of that relationship. All right? It keeps saying that he's the father of Canaan, the father of Canaan, the father of Canaan. For some reason it says that. Over and over again.
What was the second Genesis that you give out?
Genesis 35. Genesis 35 and 22 and 49 3.
We just have to say something here for Dakota. The name of the horse?
Yes.
Vasilis.
Vasilis?
You understand that?
What? Say it real loud, Dakota. Say it loud. Come on. He named the city after that horse. The horse saved his life a lot of times. Philip the Macedon, a lover of horses. That was his father. All right.
I'm
What
curious
kind of horse
about
was it?
the language used there and those references about the relationships or the things that were done, the uncovering the nakedness of his
Yes.
father, instead of just saying had sexual relations. I don't. That doesn't quite compute in my mind.
Okay, well, see, in the book of Leviticus, it brings it out plainly, and I believe that Leviticus is making a commentary on what happened in Noah's tent. I believe that's a commentary on it. And it means that, and of course, you know, we have to realize that Abraham's half-sister was his wife.
Yeah.
Now, later on, I mean, in the early, when Cain slew Abel, he went out into the land of Nod, which means wandering. Cain went into the land of wandering, and he took his wife with him. Now, his wife had to be his sister, or his niece, or somebody. Very close relation, because there wasn't anybody else.
That's right.
They married brothers and sisters back then. As far as we're concerned, and look back at Adam, he married his sister.
No, I'm just talking about the
Yep.
language itself.
Yeah, the language.
Uncovering the
Yeah,
nakedness
uncovering
of
the
his
nakedness.
father.
Yeah.
That sounds awkward to me.
Well, it does, but he did. He uncovered the nakedness of his father. That was something you didn't do. That was verboten.
Well, I understand
Yeah.
that part. I'm just
Forbidden. Verboten, that's German. All right. Verboten. It was forbidden. It was absolutely forbidden to do that.
But see, not long ago, we couldn't say a person was pregnant. You'd say they were with child.
Yeah.
So he's talking about uncovering the nakedness
Yeah.
for that awful act.
Yeah.
I would call it.
Well,
But,
women at one time would not show their feet at all or ankles.
Right. So
It wasn't so long ago.
They used
It wasn't so long
terms.
ago that the only part of a woman you could ever see was her hands and her eyes.
I guess what I'm saying is the inference is that he had this sexual relationship with his mother.
Yes.
But he references that as uncovering the nakedness of his father. That's where I'm kind of...
Okay, the nakedness. His wife was, a man's wife is his body. You become one flesh. That's what it says in the book of Genesis. God took Adam, he divided Adam in man and female, and then he put them back together and they become one flesh in marriage. So they were one flesh again. Okay? When a man marries his wife, she is one flesh with him. So if somebody rapes his wife, he has uncovered that man's nakedness. All right. Is that it, or is that what you're...
Well, that's what I was talking
Yeah.
about. It sounds like an awkward way to say what they're saying, trying to say.
Well, sometimes in Hebrew it's very awkward. But the Hebrew is
other
so
places-
definite.
Other places it says lay with,
Yeah.
or know, to know them.
Yeah.
And that's readily understood.
But then in the book of Leviticus, I think it actually draws out what happened in Noah's tent. All right. By
Wasn't
that,
Noah naked in the tent?
It said, yeah,
Just
but
didn't
maybe
the boys back
the
up?
Noah, as far as we know, that he was asleep. When the boy went in that tent, he probably went in there and saw his mother naked also, and had a relationship with her, and she probably got pregnant, according to some of these theologians, and had Canaan. And that child was cursed.
I had never had that understanding. I had always thought that seeing his father naked, just that alone,
Some people
was
say
an
that.
extremely grievous sin,
Uh-huh.
and that whole thing was about them simply getting his brothers and saying, "Look, see,"
Yeah.
you know?
Uh-huh. Making fun of it.
Yeah.
Some people believe that. Brother John.
And Noah was the one that prophesied the curse on Ham.
That's right.
From directions from God.
Yeah. It was prophecy. It was prophecy. Like I said when we talked about different words in Greek, every time somebody, a God appeared or inspired something, it says that he hypnotized them. When God put Adam to sleep, it said hypnose. He hypnotized him, put him in a trance. And almost everybody in the Bible, in the New Testament and the Old Testament, God spoke to them in a dream or a vision. It was through hypnosis, as far as we can tell, from really the language. It's pretty neat when you can go delve into those languages. It explains a lot of things, uncovers a lot of things.
Yes.
Jesse.
I wanted to ask you, have you ever heard of any sort of religion that believes that Adam has never been awakened from his sleep and we're all in Adam's dream?
Oh, yeah, that's one of the philosophies. That's one of the Japhethites that went off into philosophy. Even the modern, now here, we're going to get into this too, but the modern, what we call the reincarnation, the Rosicrucians and all this type of stuff, and where we're all in one and all these kind of weird things, this is the epitome of the Japhethite philosophy of religion, where they made a mess out of it.
I worked for an attorney who believed that. She said Adam has never been awakened from his sleep, and we're all in Adam's dream. And I did not bother to ask her when we would be awakened or what would happen.
Well, it says that God breathed into Adam the breathings of lives. All of us were there. I've heard everything you can think of. Well, these Unitarians, Universalists, oh boy, we have been absolutely attacked by them here at times. I've had in my classes, and I mean to tell you what, I have spent hours trying to deal with some of these, unscramble their brains, and it doesn't work most of the time. But
if he was a figment of someone's dream,
yeah.
What are you working for?
Yeah.
I didn't bother to ask nothing.
Well, anyway, there's all kinds of ideas out there, and some of these are the epitome of the Japhethitic idea, because they're the brains, the thinkers, all the philosophies and everything else, and the logics. You know, they do everything by logic and theory. Abstract. Hamites are concrete. Everything they do has a purpose and something behind it, and they do it by experimenting and finding out what really works. The Japhethites, they don't care whether it works or not, they're going to theorize it.
Yeah.
All right? And the Shemites are going to make a religion out of it. All right? But I'm going to tell you, the Shemites are going to be blessed of God financially, and they are. You could just, if you have one eye and half brain, you can figure that one out. That is all from the book of Genesis here.
Yeah, exactly.
All from the book of Genesis. This is where we go from. Well, let's go out and do something. Brother John, would you dismiss us in prayer if you don't have any more questions?
Father, thank you for our class. Thank you for all this information on the background of our ancestors. We just thank you, Lord, that this just helps us to understand more fully who we are and perhaps what causes our biases and our thoughts. We thank you, Lord, that in Christ Jesus we're all made equal. And we just rejoice over our salvation and give you praise in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Well, there is a place and a contribution of all these races in the economy of human culture. Imagine. They had a place, everyone had a place. I think the most important thing is we need to respect each place and each contribution. Amen. And then know which ones were good and bad.
But each one has a good.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I read an interesting column on the web the other day.
Yeah.
Your great aunt, Sippy.
Oh, Sippy?